Good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga. We're in the month of June 2023. We're focusing on perfecting posture. And my main target today is going to be releasing tight hip flexors. And I kind of want to show you in an exaggerated way what happens to our posture when our hip flexors are really tight. So, as we sit in a chair a lot, this muscle right here in front can be contracted and tight. And what happens with our posture is as this tightens, it makes our back go into a lumbar curve. And again, I'm exaggerating that. But as these muscles are shortened, it tips our pelvis this way. So we're really going to focus on opening up tight hip flexors today. So let's come to a seated position. Nice long spine. Think about good posture as you're seated. I like to sit up on a blanket. That way I can shift my pelvis to a nice and neutral position. We'll just take a breath in, stretch up, and exhale, lower. And just begin to ground and center yourself for our practice today. And realizing that our body's a little bit different every time we come onto our mat. One more breath. And exhale. All right, let's take our feet out in front of us, a little bit wider than the hips distance apart. Your hands can be by your side. And we're going to do little windshield wipers with our legs. So you'll shift over to the right glute and drop your knees down to the right side. Then shift over to the left and drop your knees down to the left side. So we're actually just slightly rotating the thighs side to side a little bit, warming up the hip joint. In order to release those tight hip flexors, we've got to warm them up a little bit, heat up the muscles so it's easier to stretch. Excellent. Let's go each side one more time, to the right and to the left. Then take them all the way to the right and come to our Z-sit position. So I'm going to bring my left foot back behind me. I'm sitting right knee bent in front, left foot back. You can sit up on your blanket with your right hip. And this hip on the left is the one we're going to release that tight muscle. What we'll do is bring our hand down to our mat or our elbow even and pick this leg up off the floor. We're going to allow our knee to come forward a little bit and then push it back behind you as much as you can and feel this part of your leg lengthening. And as you come forward, we'll inhale. As you go back, exhale and tighten your glute muscle here. If we squeeze that muscle internally, that will help this hip flexor relax. You can flex your ankle or point your toe. Either one is fine. And also think about your core here and your shoulders. So we're not slumping down and collapsing, but really lifted up. Now, perhaps when you come forward, you can catch your ankle with your hand and then bring it back and hold this stretch, heel to glute. If you can't catch it with your hand, your yoga strap is a nice tool just to loop it around your foot. And then when you bring it back, you've got a little extra space. We're going to hold this stretch. Still squeezing the glute, pulling that knee back a comfortable distance to open up your left hip flexor. And if your shoulder's feeling uncomfortable, you can bring your fingertips gently. I'm hardly using my arm at all. I'm using my core to stay up, or you can even lift your hand off the floor and really use your abdominals to stabilize. Let's take one more breath. And then bring that knee forward. If you're using the strap, you can release it. And then we'll just bring our knees over to the other side. In our Z sit position, maybe supporting your left hip with your blanket, will come out to the fingertips or down to the elbow. Pick this leg up, bring the knee forward, inhale, exhale, push it way back behind you and squeeze the glute to open up this right hip flexor. Inhale forward, exhale, push back. And maybe with each repetition, you can find a little bit more range of motion here. When we're moving through a stretch at a slow pace, it's known as a dynamic stretch. When we hold it, then it's a static stretch. So let's do 2 more dynamic. And we're just checking out that range of motion. Then preparing for static as the knee comes forward. See if you can grab your ankle right here or loop your strap around your ankle. And then bring it back. And we're going to hold our static stretch, engaging that right glute to open up the right hip flexor. You can lift up on your fingertips. You can let go of the hand and balance. But it's about what we're doing here in the hip flexor that's our first goal to focus on. And breathe 3 more breaths. See if you can take that knee back a little farther. Being careful of that right shoulder and the left as well. And then bring that knee forward. Release the yoga strap. And then we'll come onto our hands and knees right in this position. So if you need some padding for your knees, and I suggest if you have a hardwood floor that you do this because we're going to have some time on our knees here. Bring the knees forward onto some padding. And then we'll come up and we're going to take a generous step forward with our right foot way up toward the top of our mat. So keep inching it forward to where your ankle is at least underneath your knee, but maybe even further forward. Put your hands on your hips and then press yourself forward and slightly bring yourself back. And this is our dynamic stretch. Inhaling as we come back. Exhaling as we come forward. And we don't need to have our hands on our hips, but it kind of makes me think more about pushing my hips forward and down if I have my hands here. And 2 more dynamic. One more dynamic, and then we'll hold our static stretch, staying right here. So this is the area we're focusing on. If we squeeze our butt, just tighten that muscle. It'll help this relax. To get a little bit more stretch, we can take our left arm and reach it up. So we're increasing that pull along the muscle. We can also side bend over to the right side. If you're having trouble balancing here, you might put your block underneath your right hand to help support you up, or maybe you can even touch the floor with your fingertips. One more breath here. And then we'll come up and take this extended arm and reach it across the left knee. Your right hand can be behind your back and twist to the right side. So we're just trying different positions to help increase the length of the hip flexor through side bending and through rotation and elevation of the arm. You can stay here in this twist or press your palms together and bring your left elbow across your right knee and rotate into our twisting prayer lunge. Let's take 2 more breaths here. As you exhale, come back to the center. And then a nice counter stretch for this is a kneeling hamstring stretch. So we can bring the fingertips down, straighten out the front leg. We won't be here too long. We just want to get this hip out of that stretched position for just a couple of breaths and focus on our hamstring. And then if you put your hands in the middle, you can swing this right leg around to meet the left. And then we'll take a big step forward with the left foot toward the top of your mat. And you want to have your feet about hips distance apart. It's hard to balance if you step your front foot directly in front of your back knee. We don't want to be on a balance beam. We want to be on railroad tracks with our legs. So hands on your hips, we'll do our dynamic stretch. Inhale to come up. Exhale and drop those hips down and forward. Inhale. Exhale. And find a connection with your right glute. You're squeezing that a little bit to release the front of the right hip. We've talked about this a fair amount in our years together in LisaBug classes. It's known as reciprocal inhibition. When we tighten a muscle group, the muscle on the opposite side of the joint is inhibited, so it relaxes. Let's do one more. Inhale. Exhale and drop as deeply as you can, a comfortable place, and hold. We can support our left arm on our knee, reach the right arm and stretch it up. For me, that already changes the stretch. But if you have shoulder issues, maybe it's not okay to reach clear up. So we can add a side bend instead, or in addition to. We're stretching over toward the left side to increase that right side length. One more breath here. Then come up a little bit and take this arm and bring it across. We can place the other hand on the hip and we'll rotate and look over the left shoulder. We can even take this hand and wrap it behind the back, similar to our back scratch position. Or we can press the palms together and bring the elbow into our twisting prayer lunge. Keep breathing, squeezing that right glute. 2 more breaths. And then we'll come into our counter stretch, coming to the center, straighten that front leg, shift back, and take a couple of breaths here. You can use a block or a chair to hold yourself up on, or down to the mat. Let's bring our hands in the center and swing that leg around. And we'll do a cat stretch. Just tuck the tailbone under, look toward your belly, open up your back a little bit. And then a cow. And one more cat. Exhale. One more cow. Inhale. And then neutral spine. Exhale. We'll take our right leg and extend it straight back behind us. Actually, I changed my mind. We just stretched the right hip flexor. So let's do the left. Left leg goes back. I like to alternate sides. Okay, so we're going to focus on stretching the front of your left hip again. So let's bend your knee. Inhale to prepare, and then exhale and push that foot up as high as you can to the ceiling to open up the hip flexor. Inhale to lower the knee. Exhale to push it up. And of course, if you'd like to work a little more core and balance, we can take our right hand off the mat as we do this lift and lower, which is a dynamic stretch. And we're just pushing against gravity to lift the leg up, squeezing the left glute. Let's do 2 more dynamically. And then 1 more and hold it up there. So you can stay here, or if you have the ability to reach back with your right hand and grab your ankle, we can lift up into what we call half bow pose, kneeling half bow. And you can use your yoga strap too around your foot to be able to do this exercise and have a connection with the ankle. 2 more breaths. And then exhale, release that knee back down. Round the back up into cat. Exhale. And inhale to cow. Exhale to neutral. Now our right leg goes back. Level off your hips. Bend your right knee about 90 degrees so your foot is right up toward the ceiling. We'll inhale. Exhale and push that leg up. It might only be a small amount. And inhale to lower your knee. Exhale to push it up. Now try not to do a big back bend when you push the leg up. We want to keep our core connected. So we don't put this into our back. We put it into our glute to open up the hip flexor. You can extend the left arm. Dynamic flexibility. 2 more. One more and hold it up there. You can stay right here or reach that hand behind, and I kind of cross my ankle over to get a hold of it, or to apply your strap and then come into your half bow as just an option. But it does make me feel the stretch in the quad and hip flexor a lot more when I grab the ankle. 2 more breaths. Release it down. And a counter stretch is a cat. Round it up. And a cow. And our neutral spine. Okay, so we're going to kind of combine the last 2 stretches that we did. If this is too challenging for you, you know what we did before with the kneeling lunge, and you know what we did before with this last pose we did. You might need your strap for this and definitely some knee padding. So let's bring our right foot way up to the top edge of our mat and kind of walk this foot out to the right side a little bit so you have some more space side to side between your feet. And we'll drop the hips down. Check the alignment of this foot. Make sure it's not underneath you this way, and make sure this knee is behind your body. So what we're going to do is to bring this ankle in and hold on to it either with our hand or strap. Be careful when you start because sometimes this hamstring can cramp. If you just go, oh, let me bend my knee, then this hamstring doesn't like it very well. Now what I want to do is place this hand down on the floor and reach back with this hand and put it into a twist. So we can try that for see if you can get hold of that ankle with your hand. If not, use your strap. And again, this pose is not for everyone. So if you're saying, nope, that's not in my vocabulary of yoga poses, then I want you to do one of the other ones we just did. And let's hold this static stretch. And this one is a huge one for me. Let's get a couple more breaths here. And if you have the ankle, release it. And we'll stretch the hamstring in front again by shifting back, extending the leg. And this pose is one of those that you might be able to do on one side and not the other, maybe because of a knee replacement or range of motion issues. So let's see how we do on the other side. Let's take that big step forward with your left foot. Once you get up to the top of your mat, walk your foot over to the side just a little more. You might need your strap to lasso around that back foot. Be very careful with your back leg hamstring. And very slowly see if you can reach back and get a hold of it. And then drop the hip down into this stretch. And again, it's not for everyone, and that's okay. There's a lot of options with LisaBug, and feel free to take the one that works best for you. 2 more breaths. And release it down. Shift back into a brief hamstring stretch. That was a hard one. And then we'll swing that leg around. And we'll do one more cat. And one more cow. And exhale back to neutral. Working our core today with the plank, and there's many ways we can do planks. And hands and knees in its simplest form is a plank because we're keeping our spine in neutral and we're engaging our core. So we can do this exercise in hands and knees if you'd like. And I'd like you to take your right hand and touch your left elbow or your shoulder and set it down. Take your left hand and touch your right elbow or shoulder. So this is going to be the action of just switching from one hand to the other and keeping our spine neutral. So from here, to make this a little more challenging, we can walk the hands forward, drop the hips down so that we're level and we're now in a kneeling plank. We take the right hand and touch the left elbow or shoulder and switch. Now we feel this a little bit more in that kneeling plank. And then that final option is to tuck your toes under, lift your knees up so you're in a nice full plank. And this one is super challenging. Touch shoulder or elbow, touch shoulder or elbow. And your goal is to keep your body as stable as you can while you're taking a hand off the floor. And if you can't pick it up completely and reach your shoulder, maybe just barely lift your hand off the floor, maybe about an inch. And then the other side. Let's do a couple more on each side. It's really hard not to twist the body. All right, drop knees, come back to child's pose and relax. Good, challenging exercise. Okay, we're going to set up for some bridging. And if you have a yoga block or a little blanket or pillow or something to tuck under your hips, we're also going to do a supported bridge because it's a really nice hip flexor release. So come on down onto your back, have your block or even a really thick book or something works great. And then we'll take our time to come down onto our backs and bring our feet about hips distance apart and prepare for what we call the hip lift. So the hip lift is to keep your spine in neutral and just to lift up into a bridge without changing the shape of your core. So you're going to keep that core in neutral and just lift your body up and set your body down. And I want you to focus on your glutes, and each time you come up, squeeze the glute and open up this hip flexor. You're doing both sides at the same time. So the back body, glutes and hamstrings are working strength. The front body, the hip flexors, are working flexibility. And the higher you come up, the more you will stretch your hip flexors. So we're going for a pretty good amount of lift, but we're not putting a back bend in our back. Let's do 2 more. This is our dynamic stretch. And 1 more holding at the top for static. So we keep some engagement on the glutes. We keep the hips up. We can also interlace our hands behind our back if you'd like. And you just sort of rock side to side a little bit to pull your shoulder blades underneath your body. And this sometimes helps us to get a little bit more lift through the heart. You can walk your feet in a little closer to you, just a smidge, and push up a little higher. And let's hold a few breaths here. Oh, I'm feeling that work. All right, if your hands are interlaced, you're going to separate them, stay up in your bridge, and grab your block. Where'd I put it? There we go. So the block is going to slide underneath your hips, not your lower back. So we want it braced on our wide pelvis, not on our backbones. That's free. And we'll just hold this supported bridge. And this is going to keep the hips up for us while we stretch our hip flexors. So we'll bring the left knee up to the chest, hold it in. If it's difficult for you to reach for it, just lace your yoga strap around your knee and hold it in toward you. Even a little hand towel. So the right one's the one we're going to be stretching. Let's slide your heel out along your mat until you can straighten that leg and let it relax. And we'll hold here for several breaths. Now you can still slightly squeeze your right glute, fire that muscle a little bit, and notice what happens when you do. As soon as I fire that muscle, I can feel my hip flexor stretching out a little bit more and letting go. And it's not a big firing of the muscle, you're just gently starting to contract it. As we hold this hip flexor stretch, if you'd like to get stretching for your hamstring on this left side, we can unfold the leg up or you can use your yoga strap here under the bottom of your foot. And let's see, I've got my timer across from me. Let's hold another minute right from here. If you're doing the hamstring stretch, you can add some ankle movement, flex and point, maybe some circles. And just enjoy this passive release for your right hip flexor. Close your eyes for the last few breaths. Just notice what you're feeling in your body today. We have 10 seconds. And then we'll slowly rebend this left knee to set the foot right down on the floor. And then we'll hug the right knee up in toward the chest. You might have to adjust where you are on your block because sometimes as you move your pelvis, it gets out of its correct position. And then we'll slide this left leg, the heel slides along the mat until that leg extends to straight. And we can gently contract the left gluteal muscle to release the hip flexor. And then our option here is to start to extend the right leg straight any amount. And we hold. This is a nice stretch that can be done on the edge of your bed. So you'd be on the edge of your bed so that your hips are supported, but your leg can hang off of the bed down toward the floor. That gives you a really wonderful hip flexor release. Maybe first thing in the morning. Especially if you sleep maybe on your side and you hug your knees up toward your chest, those hip flexors are shortened the whole entire night. We can add that flex and point of the ankle or some circles. And we have about 35 seconds on this side. Slow, deep breaths. Maybe close your eyes for the last few. All right, let's bend that right knee. Bring it back down to the floor. Bend your left knee as well. And you can stay here in your supported bridge for a little bit and just relax. Or a couple other options. We can bring the feet together and allow the knees to open. This is our Baddha Konasana with a little bit of release for the inner thigh and hip flexors. Or if it's okay for your back, you can extend both legs long into our supported bridge here. Just make sure your back feels okay with this. But it's a great release for both hip flexors. And then your arms can be in any position that you'd like. And we'll just stay here about 5 breaths. Now your block has 3 heights to it, and I'm using my lowest height on my block right now to lift the hips up. But if you're not feeling much of a hip flexor release, you could elevate your block to maybe the medium position. I think the highest position is probably too high for most folks, but low or medium works pretty good. One more breath in. And then we'll prepare to come off the block. So we'll bring both feet back down to the floor, press into the floor with your feet, and lift your hips up off the block, slide it out from underneath the pelvis. And then we'll slowly roll down. So start to tuck your tailbone under and come one vertebra at a time. Try to get your low back to touch one at a time. That's really hard until your entire spine comes down. And we'll hug both knees right up to the chest for a counter stretch for the low back. And you can just hold knees at the chest. You could do some circles or rocking side to side, or you could take a happy baby, grab your feet and bring your knees down for your armpits and maybe rock a little bit side to side here. Whatever feels great for you for this low back release. And 2 more breaths. So at the beginning of class, we did some windshield wipers to kind of warm up. We're going to do that again on our back today. So place your feet down about mats width apart, and your knees are also wide. If you drop both knees at the same time over to one side, you're going to feel your hip lift a little bit, and this part of your hip will open up. And then we'll go over to the other side and lift that hip. So when you go to the left and your right hip lifts, you can tense that muscle of your glute and try to open up that hip flexor. Using that reciprocal inhibition to help you find more length. You're also getting a gentle twist here through the midsection. Your shoulder blades stay flat down, and your lower rib cage is just slightly rotating. And then next time we come over to your left side, we'll hold it. So with this passive stretch, we can stay here. We can take this left foot off the floor and slightly place it on top of the right. This is going to give you a little weight to press your leg down into a deeper stretch. Make sure that feels okay with your knee joint. If it doesn't, just take the foot back off and hold that stretch. Now, if your foot is crossed over, go ahead and remove it. Keep your knees off to the side and your chest facing the ceiling. And we're going to do some abdominal work here. So we can place our fingertips behind the head, the elbows are open, and just lift up and do a small crunch. And you're going to be feeling this in this right side of your rib cage. And lift and lower. Exhale when you come up. Let's get about 8 or 10, maybe 5 more. Try not to use your neck a lot. It's not a very high lift because of the twist. Last 2. And last 1. Relax that head down. Bring your knees right back up to the middle. And we'll drop both knees now over to the right side. Your left hip will lift. We tense that left glute to open up the left hip flexor. And if it feels okay, we can place the right heel up on top of the left outer thigh. And this side works better for me Then the other side for my knee. It's really interesting though. This is the knee I need to have replaced, but the other one does not like this at all. So let's just hold a few breaths. And I'm getting a nice stretch here in my left pec also, which is a good stretch for posture. All right, if the foot is crossed on top, we're going to uncross it, place it on the mat, and we'll do our core work. Fingertips behind the head, elbows open, so we're not pulling with our elbows to lift our head up. We're lifting the chest up. Your head just follows because it has to. We can't really leave our head on the floor and lift our chest up. I guess we could if we tossed our head backwards. But I don't want you to think about initiating this from your neck. Initiate it from the chest. 5 more. Try to keep your left glute contracted slightly. 3. Feel this along the left rib cage. 2. And 1, and relax. Bring your knees back to the center. And then we'll hug one knee at a time into your chest. Just a brief one, just so that you're loosening up the lower back. And then we'll come up into legs up the wall or legs on a chair, whatever you might like to do here. Sometimes it's hard if we don't have a wall to keep our legs up of our own accord, especially if our hamstrings are tight. So you can also use your strap, toss it over both feet. We're going to try to keep our legs up at a comfortable position, close to 90 degrees if you can. Your knees can also bend, or you can place them on a chair. And we're going to do one more round of abdominal crunches. So hands come behind the head, and we lift the chest and lower. Now, if your legs are on the chair, you're just going to be doing these lifts. If your knees are bent or straight, as you come up, your option is to lower one foot down a little bit, bring it back up, and lower the other foot down. So you can do that with a bent knee, or you can do that with a straight leg. If you lower both legs at the same time, this is called low boat pose. You can come up into your curl, and you can lower both legs, and then as you lay back, they come back up. Whatever your option is, let's do it about another 15, 20 seconds. Maybe 2 more or 1 more on each side if you're doing single work. And then hug your knees into your chest. Excellent. Let's roll over onto a side and press ourselves up to seated. We'll come into our butterfly. I'm going to sit up on my blanket here for this one as well. Soles of the feet together, knees open, neutral pelvis, long spine. And just hinge forward and reach forward any amount, feeling that stretch in your lower back and your inner thighs. come up. In yin pose, this is known as the butterfly. If we have both legs extended out, it's called the dragonfly. So you can stay in butterfly and do another stretch, or we can extend the legs into wide leg stretch and then take it forward any amount into dragonfly. And you can experience a dynamic stretch as well. You can come up for a little bit and go forward with your breath, or you can hold it into a static stretch. Maybe 2 or 3 dynamic and then hold static. Dragonfly is done really nicely from a chair too, so you can sit on the edge of your chair, place your feet on the floor out wide, and then you can just bring yourself forward from that position. It's really nice if your hamstrings are really tight. We'll come back up. Now, if we combine a butterfly and a dragonfly, one on each leg, we get half dragonfly. So let's take one leg, bring it in like this one's in a butterfly. Your body's still facing directly through the middle. This one's off to the side any amount. And then we can press from behind to lean forward. Or we can reach the hands out in front or to a block. And let's take it down and find a comfortable edge and hold a few breaths. And this knee can be bent. In dragonfly, that's okay. Actually, there's another yin pose called the turtle. And this one, the legs are bent and they're intended to be. So that's okay. And you can support this with a little hand towel as well. All right, let's do our half dragonfly on the other side. So we'll come up. You can either bend the other knee in first or straighten the other leg out first. So this foot should be centered right to the midline of your body. This knee might be high like mine if you have tight hips, or it might lay all the way down to the floor. And then let's find your stretch on this side, pressing from the back or reaching out to the front. And this one feels a lot different for my left inner thigh and my left hamstring. Dynamic or static or a combination. And then we'll bring it in, come back to full butterfly, both knees bent. Open out those knees a comfortable amount, and we'll take one final stretch toward the middle. And then coming up for one more set of core work here, let's close the knees together. And your knees are bent. I'm going to turn sideways just a little bit. Knees are bent. Your feet can be on the floor or your heels can be up. We're just going to lean the upper body back a little bit and then bring yourself back up. It's like you're going to lay back into a little recliner and come up and take it back to a place that you'd like to hold for a time. So make it something where you feel the work, but not so hard that you can't stay here. Your feet can stay on the floor. We're going to be turning to our right. So your other option is to pick your right leg up. We're just going to rotate over to this right side. and back to the center. 2 more. And 1 more. Come center. We can rebend that knee. Sit yourself up. Take your hands underneath your legs and open up your shoulder blades, doing a little bit of a seated cat stretch. And then release that. Take yourself back that comfortable place. Extend your left leg as an option. Rotate to the left. 3. 2. And 1. Rebend the knee. Now you can take that cat stretch again here as we did, or you can open your knees and take your butterfly one more time. And coming up. We're going to finish class in Supta Baddha Konasana, which is laying on our back in our reclined butterfly. So the knees are separated, comfortable distance apart, soles of the feet together. Let your knees open, releasing the front of the hips and the inner thighs. Anything you'd like to do with your arms is great. Now, if this is not a comfortable place for you to stay for the last couple minutes of class, if you're feeling any tenderness in your back or something just doesn't feel right, I want you to take another position and just close your eyes and breathe. And while we're holding this stretch, I just wanted to share something with you that Chris Saverdi sent to me in the mail. And I just wanted to read it in class sometime when I felt the time is right. So hold that stretch. Open your mind to what this might mean for you. This is from Poetry of Presence. And the poem is When I Am Wise by Mary Gray. When I am wise in the speech of grass, I forget the sound of words and walk into the bottom land and lie with my head on the ground and listen to what the grass tells me about small places for wind to sing, about the labor of insects, about shadows dank with spice, and the friendliness of weeds. When I am wise in the dance of grass, I forget the name and run into the rippling bottomland and lean against the silence which flows out of the crumpled mountains and rises through slick blades, pods, wheat stems, and curly shoots, and is carried by the wind for miles from my outstretched hands. When I Am Wise by Mary Gray. If you'd like to this morning, there's no need to rise from your position right now. But if you're ready to start some movement, you can prepare yourself to return to seated as we close our class this morning. Pause for a moment, just notice your body. Maybe you can sense a shift from the beginning of class when we began in this position to the end of class after releasing the hip flexors, strengthening our core, and working on the health of our mind and body. We'll press the palms at heart center as we close with our Anjali Mudra, which represents honor and gratitude. As always, I am beyond honored to share my expertise with you and so grateful for this community that we have established. And the light and love that resides within me honors the light and love in each of you. Namaste. Thank you for joining me, everyone, either live or later on YouTube. I'll take our recording off, and if you can stay for a minute, that would be fantastic. Hopefully next week we'll be back outside, and Melissa Borman's going to present a small section for us again next week. All right.